Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our 2022 webinar series kickoff. I'm Denise, and with me to present today is QAD and MRP expert, Don Lindsey. Everyone, hold on one second. There we go. Everyone should have a control panel similar to the one I'm displaying. Please know that everybody does connect to the webinar muted by default, but feel free to type in questions or comments at any time, right where that big red arrow is pointing. We will address any questions in the order received immediately following Don's presentation. Also, when you exit today's session, a quick survey will pop up automatically. Our attendees' feedback is very helpful, so thank you in advance for any feedback you do take a moment to provide. Finally, as soon as the recording of today's session is published, I will send our encore email. The blue Go to Replay button you see here will take you directly to the webinar replay page. Any questions and their answers will be posted just beneath the video. That's it for housekeeping, so on to the main event with Don Lindsey, whose many decades of experience will never fit on a single slide, but here are a few highlights.
Good morning, or afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you, Denise, for that nice introduction. So over the last several months, we've covered a couple of specific functions in QAD. We talked about enterprise material transfer, we talked about production orders, we talked about sales and operations planning. Last month, we covered DRP. So today, I'd like to talk about a subject that encompasses a whole scope of QAD, and that is a recall. Recalls are a continuing fact of life for many manufacturing organizations, from the direct costs to repairing the products. We will try to cover most of the tools that QAD provides to help mollify this process. So what is a recall? Recall is when a product has been determined to be a threat of bodily injury or do property damage. For us users of QAD, a product recall begins with the process of retrieving the defective goods from the customer while providing those in the company or customers and governmental agencies with appropriate information to rectify the issues. Be cautious with the time frame of a recall. It's critical to get at it quickly. So here's a quick look at what we'd like to cover today. Lots of information, so let's get going. Here's a quick list that will probably be necessary for any recall project. First, you have to determine the severity of the risk, and then you should notify your responsible government agencies, identify all the part numbers that are involved, stop production, communicate with the rest of the supply chain, and all of these activities are going to be required in a recall situation. Just remember, you need to develop one of these lists for your organization's specifics to your set of circumstances. One of the first things you do in a recall is gather together your crisis management team. Form the team, identify a key company official as a point person, get all of the leaders of the departments, make sure they know their responsibilities, their reporting, the procedures, how to collaborate. Because once the recall is in effect, the government is going to be down in your pants. They're going to want to monitor the recall process. They're going to want monthly reports. You're going to have to get your IT group involved. You're going to have to keep things posted up on your website. But just remember, make sure you're nice to those governmental agency compliance people. Some basics of product recall: take responsibility. Don't delay. Be candid, concise, and compassionate, and contrite. Own up to your mistakes. Use every means of communication you can cooperate with everybody, and be prepared. That's what we're going to cover today. All recall issues are quality issues. You must consider what the quality issues are specific to your company, industry, and governmental agencies. Here's an example of a recall. Hoverboards. Maybe some of you got one for Christmas. In August of 2021, Razer recalled 237,000 units because batteries were posing fire hazards. At $150 retail, that's a $75 million issue, not to consider the costs. So here are some of the worst product recalls we've had in history. Goes from 50 million window blinds that were strangling kids to 1.5 million high chairs, 1 million baby swings. And if some of you remember or are old enough, in '78, Ford Pinto recalled that car because if you got in a crash, you were probably going to die of burns because it exploded. Looks like babies and automobiles take priority. And that's not even considering food and FDA. On the 20th of December, just recently, Procter & Gamble issued a recall for benzene in their propellant of dry shampoos. How much do you think that's going to cost them? Some tips on how to deal with recalls. Product regulations are complex and they vary among different countries. They're changing quickly. They're just going to get more strict. And basically the solution to that is to have what's called a central regulatory repository, or basically what we call an ERP system, because it provides a good solid reference of information to address the recall, not spreadsheets, not access databases. Be totally transparent. A bad recall is not a good thing. You got to control the narrative. Communicate with authenticity. Never make statements that you don't know for sure are completely true. Use data, data, data. To reduce the risk, prevention is worth an ounce of cure, as Ben Franklin always says. First of all, undertake mock product recalls. Have emergency-ready crisis management plan in place. Hold samples from production batches so you can compare tests. Run smaller lot sizes. Communicate. We'll talk about service and support. Use Supplier portal. Kaizen exercises. Always good to identify problems. Be aware of social media. You might even consider part number rationalization, which we'll talk about next month. And maintain these key players in your dedicated crisis management team. Let's cover just a couple of foundation functions in QAD that are going to affect recall. The 36.3.24 security control is primary to good definition of data. Your security schemes are there to help protect your data and ensure that only people who have been trained and understand the processes and rules are allowed to impact your product. In a recall, it's going to be necessary to know who has done what, to whom, and why for all transactions for an item. The 36.3.1 user maintenance defines this. Security applications, modules, password control, roles and responsibilities. We covered this in July of 2019. In the recall, like we said, you got to know who does transactions. Employee maintenance creates records that are associated with entities and define individuals who do transactions in inventory and service and support, production orders, shop floor control, etc. A word of caution. I don't know how many facilities I've been in and visited where all the employee transactions are done with this guy. Don't do that. Use individuals. The 36.3.15 field security This is a great way. It defines authorized users that can update specific fields within the standard programs. This allows very tight control, but also requires significant volume of maintenances, but the auditors love it. Segregation of duty. And this is another additional level of control. SOD is a concept of separating incompatible duties. For example, you don't want a buyer processing AP transactions. I remember implementing this. It took me about 3 months to get it running correctly, but the auditors love it. The quality reference and administration guide, each crisis team member should at least be familiar with this because this can affect orders, schedules, pricing, QMS, supplier portals. Read the user guide. Enhanced controls. Enhanced controls allow for two specific functions that can be of significant assistance when dealing with recalls. The first is audit table, which defines the functions and fields of when and by whom data got updated, and electronic signatures, which are used for predetermined points in the process that require various levels of signature approval. Domains are your first level of data structure in QAD. These are primary financial issues, but domains can significantly impact the way you trace activities. You've probably got them set up. They're a pain to modify, but it may well be worth the effort. Same with entities. Entities define where you are able to effect transactional control. Again, you might look at modifying those. Site designations are one of the more important aspects of control with regards to recall, since the sites determine where you manufacture and store inventory. Inventory locations are where inventory was and is, well, it's under the company control. Putting your warehouse into specific logical units is critical control, but you have to be cautious. Business relationships are important to recalls because they define where and with whom your product lives. Business relationships are attached to entities such as customers, suppliers, end users that are a single point of entry for address, tax, and contact data. This table lists all of the records in QAD that pertain to business relationships, and you can see that at least 9 of 12 have a direct effect on your ability to control recalls. In the default tab of business relationships, you can create what are called supplementary analysis fields. SAF codes are very effective with regards to recalls, data retrieval, and analysis. The part number is the key to controlling inventory and stock, or what might be called subject to recall. Inventory is a primary asset supporting unit manufacturing. Therefore, inventory needs to run efficiently. That starts with the part number. We've talked about the various criteria for part numbers, uniqueness identification, different schemas, form, fit, and functions, ability to slice and dice. You should look at your item numbers. Your item master elements, you should be able to analyze each one of these with regard to a possible effect on the recall project. You should be able to go through each frame of an item and look at the impact of that. Unit of measure maintenance lets you tie your stocking unit of measure to your unit of measure for your suppliers and customer uses, or for additional unit control within your manufacturing environments. This can be a real issue. I've seen a multitude of inventory issues directly related to the misunderstanding of stocking and alternate units of measure. Here we see 1.4.5, inventory item data. Defines such items as item number, serial, site, location, whether you're on auto number, lot group. The 1.5 or 1.15 item data attribute menu gives you great functionality to personalize the assignment of lot data and tracking information for your manufacturing process using such fields as used by country of origin and many others. You can define profiles, categories, very functional process within the item attribute data menu. 1.16, customer item maintenance, and 1.19 lets you relate your internal system data to your customer and supplier's ERP data. Just like you and your part number, the other members of your supply chain have their own unique identifiers. You can define supplier items, quote data, customer items, link to customer engineering controls, good information. The 122.16.10 controlled item maintenance allows for even more control of specifically identified components in your production process. Remember, if you're going to ship product outside the United States, all products need what is called an ECCN, an Export Control Classification Number. And in this control item maintenance, you can record that, any DEA regulation numbers, foreign tax IDs, other codes, etc. So probably the most important thing that you want to do when faced with a recall is to be able to trace your processes and product. Traceability is the capability to know where something has been and how it got there. It's interpreted as the ability to verify history, location, or application of an item by means of documented and recorded identification. Traceability encompasses a lot of elements. It allows for continuous improvement, better customer retention, company reputation, improves inventory control, margin control. Remember, traceability is becoming a requirement to be in business, and traceability is a continuous process. Continual training of your crisis management team and everybody in the organization. So why would you want to do lot traceability? Well, it helps you get organized, it lets you keep track of expiration dates, you can trace defects, you can have a history of each product. Like I say, companies like Amazon and Walmart won't even deal with you these days unless you've got a traceability function. Even one of these reasons is important enough to implement or upgrade your lot tracking system. You may or may not have, or probably have, a quality system to help you control documentation required by the system. You may have Program, Arena, Master Control, SIBOs, others. These systems can provide training module documentation, some product and testing, Kappa, NCR functionality. Some even have item master bill and routing data. Obviously, one of the primary areas you want to visit on your way to a recall project is to the quality system. QAD has had a quality management for many years. It includes test specification, quality orders and attributes, testing records, quality certificates of analysis, all pertinent to recalls. Quick word about SIBOs. SIBOs is the enterprise-wide quality management system, been around since 1995. In 2012, QAD bought SIBOs, and in 2019, they upgraded it or rebranded it to QAD SIBOs. Includes such components as adverse events tracking, dock control, gauge management, NCR Kappa, and training. So how are we to ensure that our companies have the ability to process accurate, validatable representations of our product? There's basically two types of inventory tracking. The first is lot tracking. Lot tracking has to do with SKU assignment, physical labeling, allocations, lot control, status control, transaction control, and a serial number is basically a lot of one in QAD. Very complicated subject. We're going to try and cover this in a webinar later in the year. In QAD, the primary goal of an item and a lot number with regards to recall is to make the population of suspect items as small and as manageable as possible. We've covered the item master file. If you're going to deal with lot numbers, you're going to have to learn how to use 36.2.21.1 lot or number range management. Number range management creates sequences and sequence parameters for generating numbers or schemas for shippers, day books, lot numbers, fixed assets, etc. The 1.22.1 defines the lot in Q, and a lot depends on its schemas and contents. In there, you've got an unlimited number of comments you can put, and there are 18 user-definable fields that can cover a huge number of specifications. In QAD, there are two types of lot tracking. What is called forward traceability, who did we sell this to and where is it now, and backward traceability, what was it made of and who touched it. You want to be able to do both. 1.22.13 lot group maintenance lets you create lot groups of automatic lot numbering. And 5.13.1 work order backflush, move transactions, these can have automatic lot numbers assigned. This is especially good for excellent control. So how does lot tracking work in QAD? Well, first of all, every part is tracked and identified separately. Unique identifiers. When you issue to production, you've got record of what was issued. Each production lot has its own lot number. Every time it's moved from sales, you can do it. You can trace product. You can use the where used functionality. And basically, lot tracking ensures that the entire history of every part number and product is known. 1.22.19, multi-lot inventory detail, allows you to affect a whole bunch of part numbers at once. This can be very helpful. You can select by item, lot, location, reference, and you can change from old to new for expired, grade, assay, status, etc. Just be careful. Once you've done it, can't go back. 13.5 and 15.5, formula structure maintenance, identifies raw materials and subassemblies required to produce a product. Pertinent fields are parent, component, quantity per, structure, start and end date of activity, and forecast percentage. The 13.8.14 and 13.7, where used, can help you identify where any items that have been identified in the recall might be used in other products. This is called the goes into. 13.19, if you substitute, you should record that for traceability. You've also got the 1.23.1 item replacement. If you've got an authorized replacement, make sure that you record that in that 1.23.1 process. The 1.22 regulatory attributes menu, used to be called compliance, helps you deal with lot masters, product attributes, lot groups, control subjects. Basically, this is the means by which the system says you've got a commitment to do things the way that you said you were going to. This is your set of rules. The 1.22.24 regulatory allows you to activate. That in and of itself is a pretty significant decision. You've got to have a lot of operational things in place to do that. How are you going to identify lot numbers and serial numbers? Either none, a combination, or no duplicates for any serial number, the strictest level. And you could also determine how you're going to deal with work order, purchase order, and advanced repetitive receipts. Quality sterilization, or QAD serialization, is becoming more and more prevalent in all types of manufacturing. Automotive industry, food, even consumer products. With the advent of IoT and digital twins, all products are tending towards these types of RFD, QR codes, etc. QAD has always had serial control, but the new serialization augments other traceability capabilities in QAD. There's a tight set of relationships and integration between serialization and production orders. You'd be well put to understand this serialization and packaging as you begin to move towards production orders, which we are all going to do. Be sure you read the user guide. 16.3.4, 315, 517, 18, 19 allows you to use this new serialization to create ranges book, receive, you can do license plates, lots of functionality with the new serialization functionality. Departments say, where did I manufacture this part and how much did it cost me to do that? Work centers are where you actually consume both material and labor for work orders so that you can get the information for recalls and data retrieval. 14.13.1 routing, this is your planned sequence of events. Routers are copied from the master tables into production orders, and then you can specify or modify a specific work order for either the routing or the work center. So you know where and how components are consumed and who touched or put labor on the particular item. 14.15.1, if you use alternate routings, you should go ahead and do that for traceability. Inventory is probably the single most important piece of information for a recall. In a recall, inventory answers the questions, what do I have? What have I got? Where are they? What do I need to reorder? Where's the item coming from? Where's it going? Every item in stock has to be easy to find, and every worker needs to be able to find it. It takes a lot of training. Probably your most important tool in recall is your 3.21.2 transaction by item. You should be able to trace each one of these transactions. Each one should be well documented. You should know how to trace that for a recall. The 3.21.1 transactional info, just based on the transaction ID, you can get a whole bunch of good information, such as user, what program, quantity changes, etc. The 3.4 menu, tracking of inventory, 3.4.1, 2, 3, and 4 allows you to have controls over where the product moves in your facility. You need to know the product flows. Beware of the status changes of those transfers. 3.1.1, inventory detail maintenance. This allows you to modify or review attributes such as expired date, grades, assays, inventory status. Remember, the more detailed description you've got, the easier it's going to be to analyze the extent and scope of your recall. Sometimes it's preferable to have a single lot per receipt. I can think of lots of situations, life science or food. You can restrict those like we talked about in the 1.22.4. Expired inventory. In most cases, expired inventory should not or cannot be used or issued to manufacturing. So you can use 1.22.1 to specify a transaction type that can you use to control expired lots. I would advise using the 7.18.4.8 aged inventory report by part. That's extremely helpful. And if you're using MRP, you need to take expiry dates into account with MRP netting. I won't go into physical inventory menu or cycle counting, just a word that the team, the crisis management team, needs to understand what that means in terms of adjustment to inventory on hand. Could be an indicator of poor quality in stock. Enterprise material transfer, we covered this in June. This automates the movement of inventory between various entities in QAD, which may be pertinent to your recall activity. Automated solution barcoding. Barcoding is becoming another requirement in the modern supply chain process. In addition to ensuring data accuracy in operational transactions, provides lots of information and is simple to use. Suppliers could be the most important aspect of your recall project, but a lot depends on whether the suspect components or raw material have been designated as the cause of the recall. The definition of the supplier in QAD is going to be your key to your ability to communicate and control the recall. 5.5.1.6, recalls require specification control over supplier relationships, product definitions, scheduling, lot, cost, etc. Everything that pertains to the supplier relationship needs to be part of your accurate ERP data. In October of 2021, at the end of the West Coast User Group meeting, QAD had what they call the QAD Reconnect. Tony Winter, Terry Aneka, Tom Roberts, a lot of others, all basically talked about various supply and supply chain issues and spoke of the acquisition of the Allocation Network GmbH. This is a company in Germany that handles sourcing, supply management, auctions, and workflow. It's going to be interesting to see how Thoma Bravo proceeds with this new functionality, but it's highly recommended that you spend some time on the Allocation Network website. The purchase order is the primary mechanism of interface and control in your supplier relationships. It's what you are going to obtain in the way of production and materials. Purchase orders need to be perfect and continually updated through the lifetime of an activity and beyond. It is the primary source of information for recall analysis. We covered this in 2020. If you don't use discrete purchase orders and obtain your materials from suppliers on long-term schedules, you may need to track specific details of schedule and shipment with dates, quantities, schedules, etc. 5.5.1.13 does that. Also has a history of relationships with your suppliers. The 5.13.1 purchase order receipt. Receipts of material to your inventory must be concisely controlled and used as a tool to ascertain who supplied the product, when it was provided, and specifics of lot data. This is going to relate to the attributes of the material behind the call. Whether you purchase components, build value subassemblies, receive finished goods, DOs, RMAs, you need to have absolute specifics of each of items in inventory. So for such receipts as return to stock, sales order, DOs, RMAs, these must be recorded for accuracy of traceability. In 2016, QAD introduced some new functionality to deal with manufacturing. There used to be separate functions for discrete work orders, repetitive, advanced repetitive, and now we've got the new production order, which combines most of these activities into one set of menus. So production orders are going to be your primary tool that you will use to authorize, allocate, consume, and cost product in your environment. With the new production order functionality comes a new concept called production line. This allows you to define where you do work, segregated by backflush locations, quantity, scheduler, and more. The 16.3.1, which used to be the old 16.1, basically defines the production order by order number and ID at a production site on a line with an order type and a manufacturing type, with routers and bombs, with pertinent release dates, and a couple of new fields in terms of quantity to start and expected quantity to complete. The 16.5.12 production order component issue records materials that are used to produce the production order, critical to recall. 1.22.4 production order maintenance helps you define specifics of individual production orders. This may help in the identification of any unique circumstances for an order or a recall. 16.13.1 production order receipt. When a production order is completed, materials consumed, labor has been applied, you need to put the part into inventory and transfer from work in process to inventory. This is the primary repository of production data for your recall. The 16.13 production activity control, this is where your definition of employee comes in. as it becomes necessary to record all activity regarding production. This contains the tools which are needed to control the progression of a production order through the routing on the production order or work order to record by whom and how was product touched on its way to the customer. In some cases, complex products, you may actually need to trace components or lot serial numbers through the WIP areas. If you've got material that's sent out to multiple subcontractors, this could be a very pertinent element of your recall project and needs visibility and great historical data records in that WIP block control. If an item specified on a recall project is held in inventory at either supplier or customer site, must be accounted for. Use supplier controls maintenance or consignment inventory transfer to accomplish this. It's critical to know what you've issued to production, but you also need to know all the ensuing production engineering changes from release to receipt. That may point towards poor quality or operations. Well, Linda just had a webinar on this in the fall. Great subject to listen to. Customer data is probably your most important piece of static information in a recall. This is the data repository of all things that define your customer and their relation to you and between organizations. Such information as sales orders, demand, contracts, financial, invoicing. You should make sure that you also look at possible CRM applications for additional data. The 2720.1.1 customer ship to, this is where you ship your product. Pretty important. Many customers have multiple places they operate from. You must define specifically the ship to, sold to, billed to end user, because you need to know where your product is now and where it was in the past. There's a huge relationship between ship to and 7.9.2, pre-shipper, shipper maintenance. You should also look at the QAD precision transport system. Sales orders are argumentatively the most important dynamic tool in a recall. The sales order is the definition of what you agreed to sell the customer and what your customer expects to receive. The difference between those two is, in fact, your recall. Scheduled orders, 7.13.3, create a special type of sales order that includes both typical order fields plus item planning fields. Both sales orders and customer scheduled requirements can represent the relationship in a recall environment. The recall will be defined, or the shipping of your product in a recall will be in accordance with the specification of the sales order of the contract. It's the company's responsibility to exert control over the tracking of the product throughout the supply chain. The shipping process requires great care these days. I personally have ended up with 2 queen-size mattresses within the last 2 weeks because somebody's shipping process doesn't work. And then just consider Suez Canal, COVID, all the rest of shipping processes that have to be under control. In order to understand the impact of a particular item or group of items, you need to understand supply, demand, inventory costs. You need MRP, not spreadsheets. 23.4 gives time-sensitive picture of specific items. You need to know how to read this and what it means. MRP is the ability to visualize your supply chain. The new Master Schedule Workbench is a tool that you're going to want to learn how to use. MSW is an integrated component checking tool, gives you access to item master data. You can update forecast information, manipulate bills of material, production orders, work order, inventory data, all in one screen. You need to know how to use this, especially in a recall environment. Read the user guide. Forecasting. A recall is pretty well going to stop your current production plan for all products. So you need to know how to use 22.1, 22.7 to recalculate what your forecast is based on the impact of the recall and what other products are going to be affected. DRP, we covered DRP in November. This is the correct control over internal and customer sites. Controls of purchase orders from demand sites, sales order and shipping of supply sites. This gives you control over inventory movements. And we covered that just last month or November. QAD's service and support, now called field service management, provides the tools for control of status of inventory in the field. It includes install base, contracts, RMA, end user material order, etc. Service items consist of two types of items that are service and items that are used during service. You use the 11.3.7 to set up data on how to control individual items in the service and support module. The 11.19.5 and 17, if you do maintenance out in the field, you'll find service bombs and routing functionality a necessary part of your aftermarket process requirement. The 11.9.1 end user data element, this is who has my product. For example, if you sell to the Army, it may be billed to the U.S. Army, but shipped to Fort Lewis in Building A to a Lieutenant Smith. This is who has it. The 11.3.1 install base defines the item at that end user. You define the end user, the item, and the serial number that's there. If you move it, you can trace if you move between Building A and Building B. And the 11.3.22.2 install base history is a critical part of your recall process. The 11.3.5, if you've got product that requires tracking of components, such as printed circuit boards, you can use the 11.3.5 to keep track of that relationship. The 11.3.1 engineering, if somebody touches your item at a customer's facility, you need to know who did that. And engineers must be employees before you do that. You can use 11.13.5.1 and 4 to know what the schedule of maintenance was, record any ad hoc visits that might have taken place. It's got Google Map integration, route optimization, good functionality in there. Call, car, and SIR provide an audible record of all interactions with your customers. It's the history of relationship with who owns your product. A great repository of knowledge. 11.3.12.1.1, you can use field notification as an effective tool for notifying and communicating with stakeholders of all the pertinent issues that may be related to a recall. Warranty and contract defines how you're going to intend to ensure the customer is satisfied with your product. It involves registration, install base, rates, prices, policies. You can set up contracts with specific terms and conditions that are agreed upon between you and the customer for a certain set of items over a certain set of time for a certain price. The 11.7.1.1 and 11.7.3.1, if you've returned a product to your inventory, you're going to use RMA maintenance to keep track of that. And if you send it out to a supplier to be repaired, you're going to use the 11.7.3.1 RTS maintenance. Word of note, 11.7.1.1 is the most complex menu in QAD. Just a quick word about QAD Precision. It is a delivery, transportation, global supply chain management software that was purchased in 2019. QAD rebranded it as QAD Precision. In 2006, they acquired FBO systems, which we refer to as EAM. Here you can use this as an adjunct to your ERP database, inventory, purchasing, project controls, such things as routing, sizing, labor, wave picking, etc. is available. I won't try to talk about the financial side of recalls, maybe later in the year, just to say it's freaking expensive. We all probably have heard of digital transformation I'll refer you to Eric Kimberling at Third Stage. When faced with a recall, even a simple project, artificial intelligence can help with the after-event processes, and it even can help predict future events. We all need to start planning for our use of AI. As you can see, we've covered a lot of ground today. Just about every aspect of your ERP system is going to be involved if you have a recall. You want to build your acumen on recall. Walking through a recall process can open eyes to areas of manufacturing process that are not adequately defined or covered. Improve your understanding of the recall process, but more importantly, understand how ERP system can work to prevent recalls. Look at government sites, QAD, Foreman, Knowledge Base, Document Learning Center, etc. Just a word about 32Soft. 32Soft offers several loaders that address most functions of QAD, from purchase order to production planning. It is an easy way to get data in and out of your QAD system in a familiar Excel format. It's easy to process. You can have a 60-day complimentary trial period. Installation is simple. Christian, Andreas, Olina, always there to assist. Works with all versions of SA through EE. If you've got any questions, please contact myself, Denise, or Alex. We hope you've enjoyed this short overview regarding the QAD tools that can be used for recall processing and research. Recall processing requires the entire organization. QAD offers all tools required. The issue is everybody needs to understand and properly execute them. We wish you the best for 2020. It has to be better than 2021, although at this point we're not sure. In March, we're going to have an in-person in Mug in Illinois. And Jeff Shelton says we're going to have a West Coast user group on April 14th up on the Bay Area. Please come and support your user group. If you've got any questions, let Denise or I know. And thank you so much. And back to you, Denise.
What's up next for us is our February webinar, Make to Order, the Future of the Supply Chain. And as Don just mentioned, we do have QAD user group conferences in March and April. As usual, it is looking to be a busy spring. If you're attending either, please be sure to stop by and don't miss Don's presentations at these conferences as well. Checking, and we do not have any questions, but send them along in an email, pick up the phone, give us a call, and we will include any questions and answers along with the replay when we send that out. They'll be posted just beneath the video. But for now, let's circle back to today's webinar as it relates to preparedness. I prefer to end on a positive note, but it is all too true that when disaster strikes, the time to prepare has passed. However, ending on a positive note, it is also true that what you do today can improve all your tomorrows. Don, is there anything else we need to cover today? We do not have questions.
No, I don't think so. I love your, I always love your quotes. I don't know where you pick them
Thanks.
up, but they're always so pertinent. Yeah, in regards to recalls, recalls are not a fun thing. If anybody who is listening has been involved in a recall process, you know it can be highly stressful. If you don't do it correctly, it can bankrupt your company if you don't address the issues. And what we hope we illustrated today is that QAD has all of the tools that you will ever need to adequately plan for, execute, and ship your products so that even if you get a recall, you've got the tools available for mollifying the effects of the recall. We hope you've enjoyed today, and we look forward to speaking with you in February. Denise, I'll turn it back to you, and everybody have a great day.
Thanks, Don. Thank you very much. As always, thank you all for taking the time to join us. We hope you can join us again next month as well. Meanwhile, keep safe, everyone. And from all of us at 32Soft, have a great day. Take care.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.